I was actually thinking about never doing this video. I'm not joking around, I'm not trying to be dramatic, I'm just leveling with you guys. It's a dreadful subject. I've put it off for well over 3 years. In April 2009, I introduced the term without rule of law and started discussing it here in the Nutnfancy project. WROL is what I call it, and TMPers for that matter. Well, heck, lots of people for that matter, because it's spread around. And you would actually think I have more than 2 videos out on WROL, but as of now, there's just 2 videos out. That one, April 2009, Don't Hasten the Day, without rule of law, Don't Hasten the Day. And then July 2011, I made my second in the series, and that's called WROL, Resurgence of Community. I like the term WROL because it's more descriptive than other things like SHTF. Maybe they describe the same thing, but to me WROL is more inclusive because it means, well, just that. You don't have rule of law, which keeps everything orderly and functioning in our society, in my opinion. Much of my professional career has been directed towards the support and defense of rule of law. Just like a lot of you guys and gals watching this video, that you also have devoted a lot of your lives doing the same thing. And I think we'll do that again in our lifetimes, either in an official capacity or probably along the lines of this video in an unofficial capacity. So this will be the third in my series of WRL videos. It is serious, it's a heavy subject. I've dreaded addressing it, like I said, and it's going to be called Rules of Engagement. Better said, guidelines or thoughts on engagement in WROL situations. It's now June 2012, and I finally mustered up enough courage to get in front of the camera and address this subject, and it needs to be addressed in a very responsible, logical, and value system-based discussion. And that's exactly what you're going to get from me, Nutnfancy, here in the Nutnfancy project. It's always been that way. I'm not a radical. I'm not some extremist. I am a family man. I'm a retired military member. I'm a responsible citizen. I'm a lover of the Republic, a defender of the Republic. And I'm also a realist on what can and will happen to society when WROL ensues. Now, by way of reference and by way of explanation, perhaps this is the first video you'll watch in the series, WROL basically means society goes belly up. You're going to have a complete cessation of services. Emergency law enforcement services will be unavailable. Fuel services, and I'm saying the worst of WROL, will no longer be available. Fuel will not be transported, delivered, produced. Same for food. Shelves will go bare. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be unpleasant. So in this video, I'm going to address what I feel are some considerations, call them ROEs if you will, on how to maybe make a decision whether lethal means of defense are justified. I'm going to go over several key concepts. The first will be suppositions. You can call them ground rules if you want, for this decision we're going to make. Next will be understanding the situation. That is all important. Exploring alternatives, hard choices, and then I'll finally end by covering moving on. These are my talking points. Look at that. That's all I got. I'm going to start off with suppositions. First and foremost, and this will be very foundational to the ultimate decision of taking a shot. A regrettable decision if and when, I hope you don't or I don't ever have to do that. And that is, you have a natural right to defend your life. It's not government given or government issued. It comes from God. I talked about that in the video, The Minuteman Prerogative. You have a natural God-given right to defend your wife, your children, and perhaps in a WROL situation, your neighbors. We'll talk about that. These are God-given rights. You have the right to property. No one can roll in and take your property away from you in WROL. I'm not going to address, rule of law situations where a court has adjudicated this or that. I'm talking about WROL, another civilian rolling in, and for whatever reason, he wants to take what you have. It's his. They have no right to that. That is foundational to our decision we're going to make. It's not cut and dry, though, and it's not that simple, but I have to lay that out foundationally. Also, when we're talking about WROL, I'm going to talk in this video that it is long-term WROL. It's not short-term. Short-term might be a hurricane where we lose electricity for a week. Power's restored. We really never lost rule of law. Emergency services were always available. We had ambulances rolling in. We had other communities outside the swath of the hurricane that were able to respond to us. That's not the situation. What I'm talking about is probably 2 months or longer without rule of law full on. So full on WROL long term. There are no other communities to roll in and help you because they're going through the same thing. They also don't have fuel. They also don't have food or emergency services for that matter. So it's everywhere. It's widespread. That's a supposition for this video. Long term to you, by the way, might mean something completely different. It might mean, 3 months or longer. I'll tell you this, having gone through no electricity situations myself for an extended period of time in our neighborhood back in Washington State, long term to most people is 24 hours. If they're without electricity for 24 hours, people start getting extremely nervous. Very uncomfortable. You make that last a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Oh my gosh. End of the world in their mind. I know, I've seen it personally. So long term to most folks will mean a week or longer. Then we've got some serious problems going on here. I don't have fuel. I don't have a way to heat or cool the house. That's serious. No medical, no police are available to come and help you. They're overwhelmed or non-existent. Okay, so it's long-term WROL. Limited food and fuel. During this situation, there's another supposition for this video. There are elements in our societies which are evil. Reference my philosophy video, Fear No Evil, and I talk just to that concept. And talk about the seriousness, which I always have done in the Nutnfancy project, of using lethal force when required against such unreasonable and very dedicated, for lack of a better word, evil elements. Predations could emerge in this situation. That's a supposition for this video. By predations, I mean these people, because they're not constrained by law enforcement anymore, decide that, you know what, it's get even time. It's time to roll into that neighborhood and go against those people. That could happen. We have to acknowledge that. At the same time, I don't want it to be the focus of all of our energies. And nor do I want to say in this video or any other video that it is going to be the standard of WROL situations. In fact, I'm going to put forth in this video that I think in most situations, by and large, you're going to have a peaceful coexistence in WROL. There's not going to be any guns being shot. That people are just going to be working together and trying to reestablish rule of law, trying to get services back online, trying to get an economy going again, trying to get medical services back online. And it's going to be peaceful. And I don't think any shots will be fired. I don't think there'll be any threats. You'll have some exceptions. You'll have some wolves of society emerge and do this or that, and they'll be dealt with accordingly. But by and large, I think it'll be peaceful. Reference again, and I've mentioned this in other videos, 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, San Francisco Bay Area, the Marina District, and surrounding communities. They were leveled with a huge earthquake. Now granted, it was not really without rule of law because it was localized. There were other communities that could roll in, states for that matter, and help California, and they did do that. But in a localized fashion, there was no violence that I was ever aware of. Those people worked together to help each other out. And that's what I would encourage and hope for and advocate in all of my videos, is that we help each other and we're not looking to take advantage of the situation for whatever reason, that we're trying the best we can to reestablish rule of law. Another supposition, ground rule, is that in this video and in all my without rule of law videos, there is no place for fantasy. There's no place for such words as the so-called zombie apocalypse. You know, for entertainment, right on. You know, I like watching a zombie movie too. They're fun. They're entertaining. But there are actually some people that believe that's going to happen. What? Nutnfancy? No way. No, they are out there that they think something along those lines is actually going to happen. So when I see all this energy put into the zombie apocalypse, I see all these targets with blood all over them, humanoid targets, you know, I kind of have issues with it, to be dead honest with you, because I don't want us to water down the very serious decision of taking the life of another human being. You know, we go down that road of dehumanizing these people on the other end of the barrel, maybe we end up dehumanizing our decision, which is very serious, which definitely needs all of our brain power. So I'll just leave it at that. The zombie apocalypse is complete nonsense. Has nothing to do with this, nor do any video games. And oftentimes, I'll just call them media. In popular media, we see situations like this without rule of law, and we see that the decisions undertaken are cavalier, that they're easy. We don't see the repercussions of these decisions, of using lethal force. Zombie movies, for instance, going around blasting this, blasting that, blowing heads off, cutting arms off. Ha ha ha, funny, funny. It's not funny. It's serious. So I don't want to muddle those lines. So it has no place in a philosophical TMP video. For entertainment, absolutely. Just make sure those lines are drawn and they're adhered to. Dig? Again, most of my life has been directed towards the preservation, the defense of rule of law of this country. Continues to be that way. It will never change. And in future, I will do just that. So our goals, this is another supposition, ground rule for rules of engagement, is where we're always working back to reestablish rule of law. We don't say, hey man, without rule of law is here, awesome, party time, I can go get a free television set. Or whatever, video game. Well, number one, you're not going to have electricity to run it anyhow. And more importantly, you should have a value system in place in your own person. And when I sit in front of the camera and I talk with you guys, like we're sitting around the campfire, speaking philosophically, it's like, you know, it's just like a conversation. And what I'm doing is sharing my own value system with you, my own perception of life at this point. Things are always subject to change, how I perceive things. But on these big things, I'm pretty darn consistent, as you've seen here in TMP for over 4 years. Our job is to get rid of without rule of law. It's a bad thing. In that second video, Resurgence of Community, I talked about how we're going to do just that on a micro level, that our neighborhoods are going to get together and go, wow, this really sucks. We've got no electricity, there's no more food, and we're going to start pulling our resources, and perhaps, just perhaps, we can work together as a group to, in a micro fashion, reestablish rule of law. And then little by little, society will come back, and it will come back. Hopefully smarter than before, better than before. Our job is to get through that without rule of law situation with our integrity, our goodness intact, our lives intact, the lives of our loved ones, perhaps our neighbors, our property intact, and then go on living our lives. This isn't legal advice. I repeat, this is not legal advice. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, state to state, country to country. It's just different. It's just life advice. It's entertainment, if you want to call it that. So Take it as that. I'm not the expert. Again, it's logically based on me, my own value systems, and what you've seen in the Nutnfancy project for over 4 years. This isn't new. A lot of you guys who have followed TMP for a long time will go, yep, I've heard him talk about that before, or I've heard him mention something along those lines, but this is a video where I'm really going to bring it out into the light of day, and we're going to really analyze it and talk about it. That's a supposition. Another one, and in the last supposition, is that your decision, and we'll get to that under hard choices, of to shoot or no shoot in a WROL situation is pretty much the same as in a rule of law situation. Pretty much. In other words, just because we don't have a court system available, at least immediately, just because we don't have electricity, it really doesn't change or should not change our decisions to pull that trigger or not pull that trigger. It's still a very serious decision, and we should go through what I've always called the unlock codes. You might reference my videos, the concealed carry protocol, rules of, and then close to engage. I talk about it there. We should all have unlock codes. We're reluctant to unlock the use of our weapon. There you go. That's ground rules, suppositions, I'm going to call them in this video. Now we get into a very foundationally important concept when we talk about rules of engagement, and that is understanding the situation. On the battlefield in the military, you have a thing called intel. That is intelligence. You know what your enemy's doing. It's pivotal because you don't have unlimited resources. You don't have, and I'm talking purely in a warfighting situation with the military. I'm not talking WROL here. But you don't have unlimited tanks, airplanes, troops, resources, ammunition, fuel to cover everything. So you need to know where to mass your forces, for instance. You need to know what threat, is this enemy force a threat to us? No, they're not. They're a demoralized group. We know because we have intelligence on them. They're not highly trained. They're poorly trained. The group over here they're driving home. We've got intel. They're going to be reaching this objective. That's where we need to control our focus, our forces. And so goes the battle, the ongoing and never-ending battle for intelligence in a war-fighting environment. Get a drink. I'll make a parallel here, and without rule of law, rules of engagement, you need to do the same thing. Not because you have tanks, not because you have planes and all that, but you need to know the situation and what the heck is going on. Okay, you need to know information, okay? You should have a radio. I call them HF radios or expanded frequency radios. If you can bring information off your short wave radio, awesome. Is someone somewhere broadcasting? Maybe you can get some information. You should send out feelers from your community, wherever and whatever that is, and go find out what's going on around you. What is the extent of this WROL situation? How long do you think it's going to last? Because it's going to determine your approach, your preparations, and perhaps even your rules of engagement. Or at least what to expect that's coming. Is it a short-term or long-term WROL situation? I don't know. Let's say, again, as a supposition, it is a long-term. You've determined. We have found out there's someone broadcasting in a state next to us, and we know they don't have electricity either. He's on generator. You are too, for that, or battery power. And he says there's all heck breaking loose there. I know because I've talked to him personally. Okay, valuable piece of information. So we know this is widespread. There's no news services. There's no radio. We're assuming the worst here. Okay? We're always getting information. And along with that, a very, very important thing is what I'm going to call who's who. Don't assume everybody's a bad guy. In fact, I want you to do exactly the opposite. I want you to assume that everybody's good until you have a reason to believe otherwise. And then have preparations on hand to deal with that if and when you make that conclusion. You with me? So we're not going to assume that someone who rolls into our neighborhood is evil and they have evil intentions and treat them accordingly. Not unless you have a good reason to do so. Who's who? Who's evil? Who's good? Intelligence, intel, find out. Find out about facts about groups of people. There may be, again, predatory groups that emerge. But don't go off rumors and don't go off fear. That is very, very important. And those will emerge in spades. It's always been that way in wartime, times of catastrophe, natural disaster in mankind. There's always going to be, we're humans. We just do that. We spread rumors. We don't mean to, but we heard so-and-so. It gets passed to this individual. Next thing you know, there's dragons flying down the street, breathing fire on everybody, snatching babies. And that's what your preparations are designed to prevent, when in fact none of that is based in reality. Okay, now granted, that's a stretch. But you could have rumors that arrive to you, said, hey, there's a group of people, they're roving through the neighborhoods, they've raped this and that. Well, who said so? Well, this person said so. Well, confirm the facts. It may or may not be that way. Now, does that change how I present my defensive capabilities or my preparations? No, it really doesn't, because I'm prepared for the worst. I'm prepared for that dragon flying down the street breathing fire. I'm joking on that, but you guys get the picture, right? I'm prepared for worst case. But the value system is, and a logical system is dictating the use of that system. It's always been that way in TMP, and I advocate the same with you, is that you have a very strong, defined, and durable, non-wavering value system. And by non-wavering, I mean, well, now it's without rule of law. Now I can get free stuff. Well, are you going to be one of the evil people that's looting, that's stealing, that's taking advantage of the situation and of people? Or is your value system going to do what it's always done and guide you on that straight and narrow course, no matter what's going on, rule of law, without rule of law? You're still the same person. What's good to you is always good. You know that first and foremost, you have to answer to yourself. You have to look at the mirror. What kind of person were you in that situation? I'll end the video hopefully revisiting that, because it's extremely important. It's a guiding factor. But getting back to who's who. Intelligence. I would have people in my community whose main job is to get intel. What's going on around me? Who's who? Valid, verified intelligence. Maybe I have radios in that network, but keep in mind, you got no electricity. Those batteries are going to die. Can you recharge them via solar means? Yeah, if and when you do have solar power. Is there an ash cloud from a volcano? I don't know. You might have to resort to old school, passing messages, whistle blows. I don't know. Control rumors, control fear. They don't have a place in your system, in your defensive system. You have to do that. And then I'm going to talk about something I think I've addressed in other videos, and that's called the Maginot Line Syndrome. For you young folks tuning into this video, TMPers, look up in Wikipedia the Maginot Line. I think it's spelled Maginot. It was a defensive line the French government had made in preparations for what they perceived to be invasion from Germany. And it was easily circumvented by the Germans, even though it had impressive fortifications that were supposedly impenetrable. The purpose of me bringing this up is because perhaps there's some people that feel like they're, I don't know, without rule of law preparations, zombie preparations, I hate using that term, whatever. They think they're so awesome that there's no way they can fail. They are set. Well, the only problem is your preparations are static, just like the Maginot Line, and static defenses can easily be overcome. I don't care what they are. Once they're found out where they are, they can be destroyed. They can be overwhelmed. They can be circumvented. They can be thwarted. Look up the history of mankind. It's all over the internet. So, my point in bringing this up is that you are not an island unto yourself. Just like I said in Resurgence of Community, you're going to need other people's help. And also, at this point, when we're talking about rules of engagement, I would really, really like it if you laid low. Gunfire is a great way to announce your presence in any area. It's a great way to announce your presence to bad guys that weren't aware of your presence in that area. And maybe they come a-looking and see what's going down. Maybe they're also looking for information. Running of a generator, another good way. Hey, someone over there has electricity. Party time at that shelter. So lay low. Don't put overconfidence in your preparations, because You may be sorely disappointed. The best defense you have is realizing that they can be easily overwhelmed and easily circumvented, just like the Maginot line. It's history of mankind, bro. Understanding the situation. That's going to be ongoing. It's not, hey, we understood it now. Nope. Week has gone by, now it's changed. What's changed? Well, is our government up and running? Are there services up and running? How can we aid those services getting up and running again? The need for intel will be ongoing. Understand the situation, especially when you're talking about who's who. Don't think of people as bad unless you have really hard evidence that they are. Especially when we get to the section of hard choices and making the shot, because you could be making a very gross mistake. Next section. Exploring alternatives. We've already established the fact that we have a God-given right to defend ourselves, our wives, our girlfriends, our children, our property. It's indisputable. No one can take that away from you. How are you going to accomplish that, though? And that's what this section is about. I would advocate that you accomplish it at the lowest possible point on the force continuum. That's a video I came out with, although I think that video kind of sucked. But I did talk about the concept in a rule of law daily carry situation in about 2009, early 2009, I think. Are you going to first start where you should, and that is negotiations? Talking. That's your number one tool. I'm going to try to dissuade these individuals on hopefully the perimeters of my community not to carry on with what I perceive to be, I don't want to say evil, but let's say damaging actions to my community or myself. I'm going to try to talk. I'm going to posture too. In that I'm going to be armed to the teeth. Remember, I'm armed up already for the worst possible situation. And if you watched any TMP vids, that's pretty much how I'm going to roll when on patrol in WROL. One reason is because I do want to make a show of force, and number two, I do want to be prepared for worst possible situation. But not in all situations would you want to be armed up. For instance, when rule of law starts reestablishing itself and law enforcement starts reestablishing itself, you have information confirmed to that effect, you probably don't want to be armed to the teeth when those guys roll into your neighborhood. Especially if there's been bad guys roving around and they have confirmed information of that. They may do some confusion and think you're them. But let's back up a bit. We're in full-on WROL in my neighborhood. Yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll. And I have friends that are ready to rock and roll. Many of them also police officers. And they're on the left, they're on the right. These guys are surrounded, they're flanked. But I'm not jumping to use that force, lethal force. In fact, I'm going to try to talk these individuals out of pursuing their course of action. Hopefully I'm successful in that. If not, then I go up the force continuum if and when there's time. And because of their actions, you may bypass all those initial steps of the force continuum and go right to lethal force because you do not have an option. You don't have time. For instance, if they immediately present lethal force, whatever it is, whatever form it comes in, you will have to answer in kind, or you die. Just like rule of law. In rule of law, I'm not like patrolling my neighborhoods with an AK. Hey man, it's rule of law, but I'm in charge of this neighborhood. No, the cops are in charge. I'm a time-critical backup to my own family situation. But I don't roam the neighborhoods wanting to have a conflict. I'm not going to say you can't be a neighborhood patrol dude. You can. But you have laws you have to adhere to. You have a force continuum you have to adhere to. You are answerable to a court of law. You have to adhere to that. Now, if it's time critical, presented with lethal force in that situation, then that's different. That's rule of law. You answer in kind. Hopefully you'll be exonerated in a court of law. You did the right thing. I'm talking without rule of law here. Going up the force continuum. Didn't talk my way out of it. They're still going to do what they're going to do. Maybe then I can employ some non-lethal alternatives. What are they? I don't know. Pepper spray if close enough. The wind is cooperative. Taser C2. Baseball bat employed against the thigh? I don't know. Fist? They don't die. Maybe they're thumped on a little bit, maybe a lot, but they don't die. It's better than dying. It's an option in force continuum. And what we're trying to do is just what I said at the beginning. We're trying to preserve our lives, lives of our loved ones, preserve our property, establish rule of law. That's our goals, always. We're not out to punish it. We're not out to be Rambos. We're just trying to make it through this. Force continuum, perhaps you have to go all the way up to lethal, and we'll hit that here in the next section. But explore alternatives. You need to be very reticent about going up that scale. And honestly, there's some dudes out there that scare me. They scare me. I see what they're about and the things they say and the way they approach this in such a cavalier fashion, in video game fashion. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. They're also almost like saying, I can't wait for this to happen. Let's go back to my video 2009, Without Rule of Law, Don't Hasten the Day. In that video, I showed images of World War II, of suffering during World War II, and the sieges that took place in World War II in the Russian cities, and the millions of people who died. All the the infirmed, the sick, the elderly, all those people are dead in true without rule of law because there is no electricity, there is no medical services that can take care of them like there are now. And they go by the wayside, and these people without those services will die. Millions. How about in a desert environment where they need electricity to pump water, to run their air conditioners? Next thing you know, in every house it's 125 degrees. On that micro issue alone, thousands will die. We could go on and on, talking about the realities of without rule of law, the realities of loss of services, and the misery that will ensue. And yet there's people who act like they welcome it, they want it. Not me. I'll work through the system. I love rule of law. Hey, but this is going on, that's going on. So work through the system as long as you possibly can. It's a lot better, trust me. If not, you need to comprehend the scope and the suffering of human history better. So when we explore alternatives, we're trying to prevent that. We're trying to prevent pulling a trigger on another human being. But he's evil. That may be, but there still may be another course of action, and another one might be leaving. Maybe they are evil. Maybe they're bad. Maybe the counter that you just had is away from your residence, your cave, your missile silo, your bread van, your house, whatever. Bug out. Get the heck out of there. Just like in rule of law. Just like I've talked about on camera lots, Let's go back to rule of law. You're a concealed carry handgun owner, and you're presented with a lethal force decision, and it's not time critical. Maybe you can get out of it. I don't think any court of law would ever fault you from fleeing the situation. Hey, man, guy had a gun, you booked it, he took a pot shot at you and you missed. Cops got him later. Is the court of law going to roll in and go, oh man, you should have squared off with that guy, you should have shot him? No. Most courts of law and most jurisdictions, from my understanding, this isn't legal advice, will exonerate you. You got yourself out of that situation. You avoided taking the life of another human being. Congratulations. Pride has nothing to do with it. Ego has nothing to do with it. Honestly, right or wrong has nothing to do with it when it comes right down to it. But he was wrong. He said this. He did that. Well, welcome to life, dude. Without rule of law situation, we're going back to that. There are no police services, law services, court services for that matter. How are you going to handle it? Well, if you're in a situation where you can leave, leave. Maybe with the intention of coming back to your hold-up point, wherever that is. Maybe they don't know about it. Now, if it happens at your hold-up place and you have no place to retreat, then maybe your decision is going to be made for you. And you have lethal force presented to you. There, you can't flee. You've gone through your unlock codes, the force continuum. Boom, you're right there, lethal force. And now you're at that very regrettable decision of you have to pull the trigger. Or better said, you've decided that you have to pull the trigger. If I were to give you a standing rule for this video, if I were to, distill it down for you, I would say really, really, really try not to pull that trigger. Err to that side. Err to the side of, I'm not going to take the shot. That's where personally I'm going to err. And honestly, to the point where I won't shoot unless I take rounds first in WROL. But in Nutnfancy, you could get killed first. I know. Trust me, I know. But then again, I'll go back to understanding the situation. Who's who? Is my information completely correct? And there's so many variables. There's so many situations we could go over. I'm not going to. I don't know. I don't know if it's correct. And I really don't want to kill another person. Now or then. And I would hope you'd feel the same. But let's say we've arrived at that hard choice. And this is the next segment of the video. The hard choice where we've determined, because of our experience, because of our intel, facts we verified, things we've seen, or force we're just looking at with our own two eyes right here, right now, we're going to have to take the shot. Take the shot. Take the shot. Rules of engagement, I can't sit in front of the camera and say, hey, this is when you'll shoot, this is when you won't shoot. Nobody can. Your value system will do that. It's going to make your own decisions for you. You should have a value system. I have mine, it's durable, it's unchanging. You're hearing it right now. I mean, you have been for 4 years. When do you make the shot? Well, when presented with lethal force. What is that lethal force? Well, it could be a firearm. It could be an edged weapon. It could be a baseball bat upside the head. It could be a vehicle. It could be a fire device of some kind. These are all lethal. We could spend another 10 minutes covering all the possibilities, couldn't we? That's up to you to decide. When we talk about hard choices, when we talk about the implementation of lethal force in a WROL situation, there is one thing I would, again, advocate you consider and perhaps establish, and I'm going to call it a neighborhood council to help you with that decision and to help you in your localized area and in your own situation establish your own rules of engagement. Neighborhood council, what do you mean, Nutnfancy? Well, I'm talking about a group of people that live around you that have a vested interest in protecting the area you live in because they're your neighbors. Whether you live on a farm complex and they're a mile away, they're still your neighbors. Or if they're right next door, you're in an apartment complex, they're all your neighbors. And you're going to have all walks of life and all types of people find themselves allies in a WROL situation. But Nutnfancy, I hate my neighbor. He's a dork. I've been there, bro. I know exactly what you're talking about. He may not be a dork in a without rule of law situation. You may find all the petty differences you had in normal society just kind of drift away. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You ever heard that? Yeah. Maybe he continues to be a dork. Maybe he's an enemy. Maybe he's one of the guys you got to watch out for in without rule of law. I don't know. I do know this, and going back to resurgence of community, I'm going to try to use every neighborhood asset that I can get my hands on to, again, provide security and peace in my own community. And along those lines, there's going to be a neighborhood council, maybe called other things. Maybe I'll draw upon ecclesiastical resources. Maybe you have a church. You go to a church. You can use these people to help you. Maybe you have some type of professional who is proven in the professional world to have good judgment, to be over people, who is respected in the community before WROL ensued. We could go through all kinds of professions. Generally, it's someone who was given authority, who was trusted, had background checks. These would be good people that I would like to have on my neighborhood council. I want wisdom. I want life experience on my neighborhood council. And no, they don't have to be shooters. They don't have to be gun people at all. They have to be smart people, good people who have a value system. Because with that value system, we're going to sit down, we're going to confer with one another, and we're going to say, this is our situation as we understand it. Here's the intel. And I suggest, or we suggest, that this is the border of our small community until we can enlarge it and hook up with other communities. And it behooves us to secure that border, and this is how we should do it. And if and when it is attacked, there's lethal force presented to us by whatever means, These are the rules under which we feel it is justified to use lethal force. That's the neighborhood council's job. It'll be different for every situation. Maybe you live on an island. Maybe you live up in Antarctica. And again, the chances of you having never employed this lethal force probably slim to none. Let's hope. But you have a neighborhood council when it comes to these hard choices and addressing them. And now you have a rule system to fall against other than your own value system, which you should always have. But now we are back in that situation and you have all the unlock codes. You've met the standards of your council of when it's justified to use lethal force. Now, if and when rule of law comes back into existence, and it will, they may or may not convene a council or whatever hearing they want to do and say, hey man, there's 12 dead people buried within the confines of your community. What happened? Council steps forward and they tell the story because they've kept records. That's another thing I advocate you do. Keep really good records. This happened. We had a patrol of 5 men armed to the teeth come in. They shot 2 of our guards without saying a word. We returned fire. We killed the patrol. We come to find out they had ransacked and robbed 2 other people. We have verification of this incident. Here's the facts. Here's the evidence. We have photographic evidence. Do you have any more questions for us? Chances are they're going to say no. Thank you very much. It sucks for them and it sucks for you. Have a nice day. I broad stroke that because I don't have video time to do otherwise. That's what I'm talking about. Is that you should have a council. We should have some really smart, patient, and good people on that council to help us make the decisions. By the way, on that council, expect dissent. Not everybody's going to be on the same sheet of music. You may have some people say, hey, I don't care who rolls in. We give them what they want. We never fire a shot. Some pacifists, and that's not me if you haven't figured that out. You have some other people say, you know what? I say we shoot everybody who comes over the fence line. Some extremists. That's not what we want. Maybe somewhere in between we come up with a realistic, founded on the course of human history, set of guidelines for use of force from the council. For instance, you might want to have some thought process of what do we do to preserve, and I'm not going to say, by the way, I'm not going to say you have to have a neighborhood council. Maybe your situation is such you just cannot. So you're going to do this on a family basis, on your own. But you're going to still have to sit down and decide. I'm not doing it for you. You have to do it. I don't know what your value system is. You're going to have to decide, for instance, when will I shoot to protect property? That's a hard decision. I can't really give you any answers. Food storage, for instance. Hey, I got people rolling in. They want food. They're taking food. You know, maybe some people here will say, hey, you know what? Anybody rolls in and try to take my food, I'm going to totally cap them. Easy to say online, like a lot of things are, right? When you're anonymous and you're online, anybody can pretend to be anybody. Everybody's a Navy SEAL, right? That shoots 1-inch groups at 300 yards when they're online. But in reality, there's something completely different. You might see that in this video. Let's get back to that though. Oh yeah, man, I'm going to cap anybody who takes my food. Oh really? You're going to cap that lady with her daughter, her 8-year-old daughter who snuck into your tomato patch and is stealing tomatoes from you? You're going to stick your rifle barrel out and shoot them? Suddenly your game plan doesn't make that much sense. Maybe I won't. There's lots of situations. Again, we could spend a lot of airtime on how they are going to be. Some may make the point, well, if I lose my food storage, if I lose this critical resource as water, for instance, that allows me to feed my family, then I die. Allie ripping someone's throat out again. I hear you. I am not going to weigh into that argument because I really don't know the answer to that. That's on a case-by-case basis. I don't know. I will say that I would hope that we strive as much as we can to help one another and not be spring-loaded to be, violent with one another. I don't wish that at all. You're going to have to make some hard choices. Hopefully that council or your own family council will be a part of that. You take the shot. Expect consequences. First and foremost, psychologically, it's a burden. Look at the vets coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and that's in a prescribed UCMJ war situation. And they have to deal with PTSD, law enforcement officers who've made shots. Even completely justified shootings, they go to bed every night, they see the face of the person they killed. It haunts them. It's a burden to carry. They feel guilty about it. They question every action they took. Was it necessary? Could I have addressed this any other way? It's not an easy thing. Remember, that's why I kind of thrashed on the whole popular culture thing where they act like this is such an easy decision. It's not. It's serious. It's burdening. And it's best not to take the shot, that we stay as low as we can on the force continuum, that we look at all kinds of other alternatives prior to that. One of them may be completely unexpected. You take the shot, one of the dudes gets away, you confirm they're evil, they're doing this, they're doing that, whatever, and he comes back with 10 other dudes, more armed than you are, and he knows right where you are. Remember what I said about the Maginot line? I'm the baddest dude around here. Oh, you think you are? Until those dudes show up, and then you realize, I'm in a world of hurt here. That's right. For a whole bunch of reasons, it's best not to take the shot if you can possibly avoid it. Stay low, stay good. Don't take the shot. There's all kinds of situations where lethal force could be presented to you. It could be presented to you at longer ranges from people that maybe you have identified, you know who they are, you've verified this information, you've verified their identity through optics or whatever, and maybe they decide for whatever reason to engage you at longer ranges. You guys know how I review equipment here, guns and systems. I'm an advocate of having competency and a squared away system in everything. Pistol, shotgun, long range bolt action, long range sappers, semi-automatic precision rifles. I believe in all that, both for my military LE customers here in TMP and also for without rule of law. To have those capabilities, again, backed up by a very solid, durable, non-changing value system set of ROEs. That being said, I think most of your contact or engagement distances, even without rule of law, are going to be very close. I'll ballpark it, 25 feet. What? Really? That close? Yeah, I do really think that close. 25 feet, probably closer. So if you are going to make preparations, you might want to concentrate on that area first. You're fraught with all kinds of problems if you decide to take that long distance shot. One is you're kind of violating one of my own personal guidelines, rules, whatever you want to call them, and that is to not take the shot, extricate yourself. I'm assuming you're not taking fire from that person. I mean, do you really have to take a shot at that long range? I'll tell you, in rule of law, if you did that, you'd be in a world of hurt. Because the court system would go, why did you ever shoot? You were not being threatened. There's no way they could have hit you at that distance. Well, I thought this, I thought that. Okay, here's your cell. That's how it goes. Remember what I said. Without rule of law, with rule of law, shoot situations very similar. To sit on a hill and, without rule of law, you're going to be shooting zombies at 300, 500 yards. No, I just don't see it happening. Maybe in rare cases, again, where your intel is tight, you know what's going on. I won't go into that. So distances is a very important consideration. It's probably going to be close and quick. Also, when we get to hard choices, I expect every able-bodied man within our community borders, whatever that's defined as, is to step up and help. They need to be a part of the solution, a part of perhaps daily patrols. I have a perimeter set up, just like I would in a military complex. I don't know if complex is the right word, but I'm going to be running guards. They're going to be in two-man teams. Each one's going to have a certain flank to watch. There's going to be a quick response team in case one of them gets contact and they need reinforcements. That'll be another two-man team that'll go out and help them. They're on call all the time. I expect those people to step up. But Nutnfancy, I don't know how to run a gun. I'll teach you how to run a gun. I'll give you a Mosin Nagant with 100 rounds. I'll teach you how to shoot that Mosin. You will be part of the solution. But I can never, ever take the life of another human being. Okay, well, that's different. If that's your own value system and that's just something you cannot bring yourself to do, then perhaps you can be useful in other ways. Maybe you can help medically. You can help food procurement, establishing the economy, the barter economy, and then perhaps some very unpleasant tasks, and that is, I even hate to say this, but I have to say it, that is burial detail. So you make a very justified shooting. Now you've got 2 dead bodies. Now what are you going to do? I hate to even bring this up, but no one talks about it. I will. If you leave them and you just say, hey, everything's cool, man, we'll just leave that there. By the way, I'm in a noisy area now. Sorry. Alternate location filming this. You're going to have to get rid of them. You're going to have to bury them. Otherwise, disease is going to set in and you're going to be in a world of hurt. So these hard choices are definitely hard. They're difficult. They're fraught with all types of consequences, many of which I've talked about here. But remember, the basis, the foundation for without rule of law, rules of engagement is your God-given right, your natural right to self-defense, to defend yourself, your family, your children, and yes, even your property. The government doesn't take that away from you. Okay, you will always have that. How you choose to employ it is completely up to you. I think if you've watched the video to this point, you do have a value system, and I got to wrap it up. I'm out of time. That value system will serve you well and without rule of law. And when it's all said and done, you have to look yourself in the mirror and you have to say, I was a good person through that. I'd made good decisions. I did the best I could. I was good with my fellow human beings. I feel good about my decisions. And if you do that, you're true to yourself, you'll make it. And you won't have any regrets. Whether it's in rule of law or without rule of law. This is Nutnfancy.